next exercise is going to be learning how to use your Prisma pencils and designing. So when I started design, and this started off with a blank face, paper white, I will go over the entire design using my lightest pencil or my flesh tone, whatever is closer to my skin tone. And the type of pencils that I'm using are Prisma pencils. And I like the Prisma pencils because they have a lot of more wax in them, and so they will tend to blend a lot easier than regular pencils. These are considered artist pencils. So I keep a really even weight with my hand, and I go over the entire picture first, getting my basic foundation, which I've done already on this, but again, you want to just keep a nice even weight to this. And then as I start to get into areas that I want to be more shadowed, I will go a little darker. And so at the temple, remember, or maybe around the forehead, if the forehead is high, the sides of the nose, I will begin to go darker. And the other thing I will do is I will go in a different direction. So that'll fill in any gaps that are made from the first direction. So I will continue to do the whole face in the same direction, and then I will change direction. And this is also a good technique to blend colors like I have already on here. Going back to your lighter pencil will help you blend your darker colors in. So you can see I'm going really kind of hard right now to get this to just sort of blend the darker colors. Once I've done that, then I start to go with my next darkest color, which is sort of a light brown, or it could be a soft red. And I start to go into the areas under the bone, and I start to darken them up. Now the one I'm working on here is our thin face. Our thin face we've done when we did our beauty makeups. We learned how to do a normal face and a thin face. So in this case, we often see the shadow, and I'm using a little bit of a red for the blush, is going to kind of bump up pretty quickly next to our highlight. And it will do the same thing down here. The shadow is going to be right under the bone, and it's going to be right next to the highlight, okay, for our thinner face. On this side, I've done an apple cheek and a wider face, and it gave her a little pouchy eye. And so what I did here, whenever you do this kind of area around the eyes, you want to think about going from the corner of the eye to the corner of the eye. We often want to take this out a little further, but not a lot of people get wrinkles out or any kind of line work out past the eye. It's the eye itself and the movement that is creating the wrinkles. So there are a couple places that we cannot change on the face, and one is the actual placement of the eyeball itself. The second is the nostrils. There's always going to be a hole right there where your nostril is, and the line of the mouth. So we can make the mouth larger, and if you've done your exercises at the end of chapter 10 on changing the shape of the mouth, we can make the mouth smaller, larger, and we covered this with our slides as well, wider, etc. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go with my slightly darker pencil, and I'm going to go to the bottom of where I want the shadow to be. The darkest part is going to be at the edge. So here we have our little apple cheek. It's going to come around the nostril, and the darkest part is going to be at the very bottom. And then it's going to be about blending the shadow up into the highlighted area. So if the light were hitting, this would be the highlighted area, and it's blending into the shadow. Does this look familiar? It looks just like those spheres we just finished doing on paper. So now we're going to do it on the face. And we would do the same thing down here as well. So the darkest part of the shadow is always going to go at the very bottom. Okay. Then we can go in as well with a slightly, we can always go back in with our medium or a lighter brown and continue to create the shape so that it gradually gives us our nice soft edge. So here we're seeing our hard edges, with a shadowy color right next to the light. And on this side, we're seeing the shadows gradually moving up into the light. Now I also had you working on cylinders on that homework page. And the reason is because when we start getting into any kind of wrinkle, you're going to notice that the line's always going to fade, number one, and the shadow is always going to blend up. So if you look at what I've done, you've noticed that the shadow is always blending up. I've drawn the line, and I've blended the shadow up in each case. Okay? In this case, I'm trying to darken this up and make it appear as though the eyelid is a little poofy. So here I've drawn that line, and I'm going to fade this up until it just fades into the highlight. Okay. And then I'm going to go into a darker color, and at the very bottom is going to be the very darkest. And I might need to add a little bit more there. And you want to just keep working it gradually, so you get a nice blend. You can also use your finger to blend. That works good. There are stubs that you can buy and use to blend. One thing to make sure, any wrinkle that you do, really, you want it to just sort of fade out. They're always going to just fade, okay? So each one of these wrinkles still needed to get the darkest bottom part put in at the very bottom. And because of the movement of the eye, we do see several wrinkles often around the eyelid itself. As we come around the plane of the cheek, they're going to go around the cheek, the cheekbone or the zygomatic. As we go above the arch, you're going to see a little more bit of a curve there. And as we go around that supraorbital bone, we'll see a little curve in there. And by darkening this area, I'm creating the illusion that this is pushed back, right? And by taking a little bit of shadow and a little bit of time, I'm going to just keep darkening these up. And if I lose my hard edge, I can always draw it back in. Now underneath each one of these, I'm going to add my light color because I want the highlight to be right up against that dark color to make a nice crisp hard edge. Each one of these wrinkles, you're going to do the same thing. And now I bet these wrinkles are starting to look a little familiar too. And really what they are is miniature cylinders. So if we were to actually take a little pencil and draw the end, so we'll take our first color. I'll show you here. And we fade that up. Alright, make the bottom darker. And we keep fading up. Here's the top of each cylinder. This is going to be highlighted. And then it's going to be a little softer in the middle. So here we have our cylinders, right? And then we're going to go back in at the very bottom of the cylinder and create a nice dark edge. And again, blend so it's nice and gradual. And to softly add some color here and blend it up until it very gradually turns into a highlight, as though the light is right here. And there's our Fresnel, and there's our light spread, right? So if you think about it, each one of these little wrinkles, and each one is coming from somewhere, is a teeny tiny little cylinder. So when we put that dark color up, we're going to, again, fade it up. I often like to start working with my middle value color, or my medium brown, first, just like here, and very gradually blend that up, and then add my lighter color, and then at the top of that, of course, there would be highlight, which is really at the bottom of this at the bottom of this. So what ends up happening is this becomes the top highlighted area of our apple cheek. And if we put a highlight right next to the dark edge there, it becomes the highlight or the top of each cylinder. So each one of these wrinkles is really a cylinder. And each one of these round shapes is really a sphere. Can you see that? So one of our first makeups that we did was doing a thin face. And for our purposes, I think it will help if we we're going to combine our thin face practice, which we did with beauty, and we're going to combine this makeup with our vampire. And so for that makeup, we'll be doing a lighter than the skin tone foundation. And you could even add a little blue or green or yellow from your makeup to change the color of the skin. But you want it to be lighter because vampires are dead, and it's going to be that skinny face. And you could even add a little red under the eye if you want it to look kind of bad, right? And around the eye, and really start to sink the whole eye in for this one. You could add a light blue if you wanted to put veins in on the forehead. And I would like you to play around with the eyebrow a little bit and maybe change the shape of the brow. Make her maybe perhaps a little scarier looking. Okay. And I did the brow. Don't forget, when you do the brows, remember the hair tends to go straight in this area, and hair does tend to curl. And when you get to the top, which is right at the outer part of the iris there, this is the top of the brow, the hair begins to go in a downward position naturally. But I want you to play around a little bit and change the shape of your eyebrow. Do a lighter foundation. And the other trick we're going to do is how to draw teeth. And I've already made lips on this, but we're going to do this. So if you want to open your mouth and find where your eye teeth are, you're going to do that. And then you're going to just give this a little bit of a curve. And this is great to do with your eyebrow pencil. And you can draw this right over your lip. And it'll take a little bit of practice. You don't want to give it too much curve because then it'll look a little bit funny. So it'll probably take a couple times of practicing that tooth. And then you can take your white and paint the tooth white or yellow, or you could add blood to it, right? You could add a drip of blood coming off of it with your blood. Right? You wanted to do that. If you wanted to make a bite mark, you can take your blood red color and do a couple bite marks on the neck, like that. Think about how big the teeth would be. And then go with a slightly darker color. Don't cover the whole part, but just maybe half of it. And get a little bit of depth to it. And then you can add some of your blood from your bottle again to that. And then you've got your bite. So for the thin face, we're going to use that. And you can use, instead of normally using, as I've asked you, the brown out of your wheel, you can actually use the shadow color that is in your box. It says character shadow. And that is the one, the black liner bottom. This one that says character shadow. This works pretty good for this particular makeup because it often does look a little bit purpley compared to this brown. And so you can add a little bit of this to your foundation and get your shadow color in with that. Now you can do a white face with gray shadows, or you can do lighter than your own face And by adding a little bit of maybe yellow, which you have in your wheel, so you could add some yellow to your cream foundation. You could add a little bit of one of the purples even to get a nice death color. And then you could take your pencil and you can draw some veins on the forehead. A great color to use is teal. A teal pencil works really great to make veins on the forehead. And you can buy an eyebrow pencil, a teal one, over at Rite Aid. And they work really great. And I think, Wet n Wild's only like $1, so those work really great to make a wonderful sort of vein effect. And again, each vein is going to be a little darker on one side, right? You might want to make your veins a little wiggly. And maybe give it some nice vein work. So again, I'm kind of blending the shadow up a little bit, very lightly. Now there's one place on the face that breaks our rule. And the rule I'm talking about is you can blend, your shadows are 99.9% of the time, they're going to blend upward. And the highlight, 99.9% of the time, is going to blend downward. Because the highlight is generally on the top of the bone, whereas the shadow is coming from under the bone. The one area that breaks our rule is the jaw. In this case, the highlight is going to blend down, and the shadow is going to blend down, and the highlight, which is going to be here, is going to blend up. So this shadow is going to blend down into this area of the neck. And you know that big big muscle that you have on the side? That's called our sternocleidomastoid. That's going to be highlighted. And this is all going to be in shadow, right? And this big giant sternocleidomastoid muscle is going to be highlighted. And you can also bring the shadow down here on this side. And it's going to fade into the skin on both sides. So it'll fade down into your neck essentially. And in this case, we put that highlight as close as we can to the shadow, and the highlight is going to blend up. This is the one place on the face where you're going to see the highlight blending upward. Everywhere else, the highlight's going to go right next to the shadow, and it's going to blend down everywhere else except for right here. So this is our rule breaker. So this is how we're going to be doing our designs. You can use whatever pencils you want, but as I said, the Prism pencils work very good. If they let you back into the school, we do have some earth tone sets of Prism pencils in the cabinet for you to use. And if you can't, then use whatever you want. You can also find some design programs online, and you're welcome to use those as well. Thank you very much.